In this video, we're going to do another example using CSV files to save and persisted data. We're going to go back to the car lot example. So we did a car lot using a class called car, and we were able to add inventory to a car lot. We did that in a previous week. This was the assignment. So we're going to take that exact same assignment, but we're going to add logic to read and write the car lot data to a CSV file named carlot.csv. So I'm going to start by making a copy of my car lot program and then adding to it. So I really encourage you to, if you're going to extend programs or you want to, you're going to start making big changes to code, make a backup copy, make a copy of what you had that was working before you start making a lot of changes to it. So we can read through this if you want, but essentially we're going to start with the car lot example that we finished in a previous video. So if you want to see that car lot program get developed, you can go back to a previous week and find that video. So let's go ahead and jump in. We're going to come to JDoodle. So instead of creating a new project, I'm going to go to my dashboard and I'm going to pick out my project. I'm going to find the car lot we did last week. We're going to go ahead and open that in my editor. Now it's here running. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make a copy using save as. So I come over here, I click save as, and we're going to save this as car lot CSV. Okay, so now we have a copy carlot.csv or carlot CSV, and so if we go back to our our dashboard, we can see that we now have two programs. So I have carlot and carlot CSV. So this way, as I begin to add the CSV logic, I'm not going to mess up my working carlot example. Okay, so let's go ahead and run this. So what we want to do, so in this example, we had a couple of cars just being added, some test data that we just added so that we could easily get the car data into our code. We didn't have to type it in every time we ran it. So we're going to take that out and we're going to replace that with a read. Okay, so let's just go ahead and delete that. There will be a read here. We're going to do a read statement, but we're going to start by writing the data before we read the data. Okay, so we need to write a method called write data or save data that will actually do the write logic to take our car, each one of our cars that's in the cars array list, and save it to a CSV file. So I'm going to write a new method, and I'm going to call it save data, and I'm going to put it right here in alphabetical order. Public static void save data. Okay. Before we do that, let's run this just to remind ourselves what this program does. So this program, it's got a menu. There are no cars in the car lot, so I can add a car here. I can say this is an F-150. Oops, this is a year. So this is a 2014 F-150, and it's got 165,000 miles on it. Okay. Now that gets added to our car lot. There's now one car in the car lot. It says right here. I can go ahead and add another car. It's a 2023. It's a Camry. And it's got 12,500 miles on it. I can now see the inventory by showing the inventory, and I get a list of the inventory. I can also update the mileage for a car. So we see which car you have. Let's change the Camry to be the new mileage is going to be 13,225. And then when I print that out, you can see that the mileage has changed. Okay, so then when I quit the program is ends. Then when I run it again, all my data is gone because I didn't persist it anywhere. So we had 2 cars on the lot, but now we're back to 0. So we're going to write the logic to save those cars to a CSV file. So here's my save data. So the way we do this is with the try catch block. So we're going to do a try catch block, and we're going to then we're inside the try catch block with the writer, with the buffered writer. We're going to use a for loop to iterate over our array list and just write all the data into the file. Now my approach is going to be to write all of the cars to the file every time anything changes. So if you change one car or add a car, I'm just going to write the whole data set. So I'm going to erase whatever data was in the file. I'm going to write all of the cars to the file every time. Okay, so let's go ahead and begin here. The first thing we want to do is do the try catch to define the writer. So try writer equals new buffered writer. Takes one parameter, which is a new file writer. Takes one parameter, which is a new file. And that takes one parameter, which is the file name. And so I need to go back and declare a constant for my file name, but we'll just use it there for now. We then do a catch. This is going to be an IO exception. And then this will, I'll just put a little message here. Error opening file to write. And then we'll put stack trace. Okay, let's go ahead and find file name. This is a constant. Okay, so we want to declare it up here where we do the array list. Public, static, final. This means it's a constant. It's going to be a string. And it's going to be called file name. We're going to assign it to /myfiles /carlot.csv. Okay, so we put that in a single variable in a constant so that we can use it in the writing and the reading logic. We don't have to duplicate that file name. Okay, so now we're back to save data. So now I've got my writer open. Now I need to write to it. So I'm going to do a while loop, for loop rather. I'm going to do for each car in cars. I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to say writer.append car.to CSV, and we'll write that logic to create a comma delimited list of our properties. And then once this is done, then I'm going to close the writer. Okay. All right, so that'll do it. So if we run this, we should get an error that says to CSV is not defined. Okay, we got a lot of errors here. So buffered writer, we didn't do our import. So buffered writer, file writer, none of these are defined. To CSV is not defined. We've got to do all the imports. So let's go up here back to the top, and let's say import java.io.buffered writer. Import java.io.file writer. And we need file. And then we need the exception. Okay. So those are done. Let's go ahead and execute that again. We still haven't done the to CSV, but let's see if we got rid of all these other errors. So now it's just the to CSV is what's missing. So we can do that by adding that to the car class. We can just come here and we can just say public, it's going to return a string. It's going to be called to CSV. Takes no parameters. And this will just return a list of our properties. So in this case, year, model, and mileage, an integer, a string, and an integer. So we're not, the range is a calculated variable, is a calculated method here, or calculated property. So we're not actually going to write the range into the file because there's logic in the class itself to derive that. So we don't need to write the range to the file, only the actual year, model, and mileage. Okay, so we just do this by returning string. So we're just going to do some concatenation. Return this dot year. We'll concatenate as comma, no spaces in there. And then we'll do this dot model. We'll concatenate another comma. Make sure there are no spaces in there. We'll do this dot mileage. And now we do a new line at the end. Okay, I always have to have that new line. So this will now be a comma delimited string that has the year, the model, and the mileage in it. Okay, let's go ahead and execute that and see if it works. Okay, so that works. So if I come in and do add a card to the lot, well, it compiles. We have 2023 Camry, 13,000 miles on it. Okay, then that's working. So when I quit, we didn't get a generated file here because I wrote the save data method in my car lot, but I never called it. So I've written it here on save data, but I've never actually called it. So I've never actually written anything to the file. So what I want to do is every time I add a car or change any of the data, add a car or update the mileage, that's when the data changes. I want to go ahead and call save data. Now you could just do it once at the end. So when the program ends, you would just save the data when the program ends. That's a little dangerous though, because if the program gets an error and halts, then you might lose data. So you want to make sure that every time the data changes, you save it back into the file. You don't want to keep that data in memory out of sight of the persistence option that's using. Okay, let's run this again and see if it works. Okay, so we're going to add a car to the lot. It's a 2023 Camry, 13,201 miles. Okay, so now there's one car. So if we can see that inventory, so we know it's added, and then if we quit here, then we should be able to look at our file. So now we see that we have one generated file. See that right here in JDoodle? If you're not using JDoodle, if you're using some other development tool, then your file will be located whatever the path name is that you gave it. So ours in JDoodle is going to be here in the car lot, so we can download that and see what that looks like. So we can open that with any text editor. And we can see that now we have three fields. We've got the year, the model, and the mileage. And there's a comma in between each one. Notice that there's a new line. So there's a line here at the bottom of the CSV. It doesn't have anything on it. It's just a blank line. So this is important because this will be the end of the file. So if you have spaces or something on this last line, then the reader is going to try to read that and interpret it as data. So you want to make sure that that your CSV file is clean at the end like that. Okay, so let's go back and do the read logic. So we now have we've saved one car in our CSV file. If we try to read it, we should be able to read that car back in, read that data back in when the program begins. So what we want to do is we want to write a read loop and create cars from it. So We're going to do that right at the very beginning of the program. We're going to call the read data. So we're going to call it right here. First thing the program does is going to read the data into the array list. Okay, then let's go ahead and write that code. We'll go right here in alphabetical order. And then we do the try catch. So we do try var reader equals new buffered reader, which takes one parameter, which is a new file reader, which takes one parameter, which is a new file, which takes one parameter, which is the file name. So there's our definition of our reader. We can go ahead and put the catches in. So I'm going to do catch file not found exception. We do the separate exception here because the file not found exception, if we haven't written any data to the file yet, then there's no data to read. And so the file may be empty or may not be found. And so we want to, that's not really an error in this example. So we don't want that to look like an error. So we'll just do a simple message that says system.out.println, no data to read. Okay, and then we'll do a second catch for IO exception. And on this one, we'll actually, this is an actual error where something happened that we don't know how to solve. Error reading. Okay, and then we'll do the stack this. Okay, so there's our read data. So now once we're in the read, we want to do the while loop. Okay, this is the while read. So this looks like, remember this is the while loop, and it's a combined assignment and Boolean. So we do, here's the assignment we're going to do, while row equals reader dot read line, and then we want that not equal to null. So this will do the reads as long as there's data in the file, and then that variable row is a string, and it needs to be defined before the while loop. You cannot define it here inline in this case because it's a combination assignment and Boolean expression. You cannot assign it here on the while loop. So you cannot declare the variable row right on this while loop. Now we have the row, so let's just go ahead and cars.add new car with the row. And so this is a new constructor on our object, which we're going to have to go and write. So let's compile this. We should get an error because we haven't written this constructor yet. So, but everything else, there shouldn't be any other errors. So let's just verify that. Okay, so I did get an error because I didn't do my imports. So I need to go back to the top. I need to do import the buffered file reader, the buffered reader. I need to import file reader. I need to import the file not found exception. That should be the ones I got. So I got buffered reader, I got the constructor for it. So let's compile that again. Okay, so now I'm just getting one error, and it's because I'm calling a constructor that we haven't defined yet. Okay, so down here on line 77, I think it was, it's now line 80. This is where our read data goes. This cars.add, this is calling a constructor on the car object that we need to implement. So if we come over to our car object, we can see it's got one constructor which takes the year, the model, and the mileage. we want to write a second constructor, public card that takes one, which is the row. And then we'll do some parsing logic in here to parse it out. So this works by, we want to remember we're going to use the split method on the row to split it with the split it at the commas, and then we'll have then we'll make an object out of that. So first thing we do is the split. So we say string columns, that's an array. And that will be, and it's going to equal row dot split. And we're going to split it at the commas. Now the split, when the split logic runs, it will go through the string row. It will create a separate string value for each, excluding the commas. And we'll create an array of those called calls here. And the commas are discarded. They're not going to be part of the final data. Now we want to do some error checking. So first thing we want to do is make sure we have 3 columns because we need 3 pieces of data, the year, the model, and mileage. So we want to check that. If calls.length, it's not 3, then there's an error, okay? So we can say throw new exception. We want to throw a new invalid argument exception because this is something's wrong with the data here, right? So this is us throwing an error that says I expected 3 columns. Okay. If there are 3 columns, then we can go ahead and parse the data. So we will have to do an include for that exception. We do have to do an import for the exception. This will be import java.security. I'm sorry, it's not an invalid argument exception, it's an invalid parameter exception. So we want to say java.security.invalid parameter exception. Okay. And then this is here it's not invalid argument exception. I'm sorry, it's an invalid parameter exception. Okay, so that should work. Let's go ahead and compile this just to make sure that we have done the imports correctly. We haven't made any syntax errors. Okay, so it's compiled. Okay, there's still 1 car in our lot that's sitting in the data file. Okay. But so we got if we run that though, we'll notice that we read 1. It's showing 1 car in our lot, but it's not actually going to be there because we haven't implemented the logic correctly yet. So it's going to all be blank. So if we show the inventory, we're going to get it's going to be a blank. And this is because we read the data from the file, but we haven't actually parsed it properly. So let's go ahead and finish our constructor. So over here, on line 21 of the card, now that we know we have 3 columns, we have 3 pieces of data, we can go ahead and assign them to the value. So first thing we want to do is the year. So we're going to have to do a parse on that. So we're going to do a try block on that and say try this dot year equals integer dot parse int the first column, which will be the 0 element. Fix the spelling mistakes there. So we're going to try that. If that doesn't work, if we get a number format exception, then we know that we'll get that if we try to parse something that's not a valid integer. Okay. And so here we'll just say we'll throw a new error. Invalid parameter exception. We'll say invalid year. Okay, if that works, then we'll try the next one. So the next value is the model, and that's just a string, so we can just assign that. That's going to be column, that's the second field, so it's the one element, because remember the elements start at 0. Now we need to do another parse because we have another int. So let's try that again. Try with the catch, and we'll say this dot mileage equals integer dot parse int calls at 2. Okay. If that doesn't work, then we'll catch num. We will and then we will throw an error, just like we did for the year. New valid parameter exception invalid mileage. Okay. All right, so this should work. So if all that works, then we should get a car. So let's run that, see if we made any syntax errors. Got one car available. Let's see what's in the inventory. Perfect. There's our Camry. So let's go ahead and add another one. What year is the car? 2000. And it's Tundra. Oops, I made a mistake. So the can't be, our code says we can only have a car from 2004. So let's say 2004. And it's a Tundra. And it's got 350,000 on that. So when we see the inventory, you can see that inventory, that's a high mileage car. If we quit the program now, that data should have been written to our generated file, so we can download this and we should be able to see that data. I can open in a text editor. So here's our CSV file. We see that we've got the extra field in there, the extra row. So I come back here, and if I run my code again, I should still have 2 cars in my car lot. 2 cars available, show the inventory. Okay, done. Okay. All right. So there we go. So that is an example of using a CSV file to persist our data between subsequent executions of our program. Now, keep in mind that let's save this. The generated file may not always be there. So at times when you if you are let's see. So the generated file is currently here, but if you come back, if you save and leave JDoodle and come back, that file may not persist. So the JDoodle is a little odd on that, and that sometimes that file is not always going to be there. So that's okay for this class, but obviously if this was a real application, that would be a problem. But just be aware that that generated file may disappear in certain situations in JDoodle. It doesn't always disappear, but in some situations it might. Okay, that's all for this example.